fellow data leaders. This is Les Muller here. Today, I have Robin Goad on the show, who is Head of Customer Analytics at the Financial Times. Robin is speaking at our Data Leaders Transformation Roundtable on the 27th of November. Hi, Robin. Welcome on the show.
Hi, Les. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So, Robin, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming the Head of Customer Analytics at the Financial Times?
Yeah, so my role is Analytics Director at the Financial Times, where I lead a team of 15 analysts and data scientists. So a lot of people would think of the Financial Times as a newspaper, but actually the majority of our subscribers and our revenue, in fact, is now digital. So we have a great amount of data, and the team that I run covers everything from editorial analytics, so understanding how our readers are using the site and how our journalists can respond to that, all the way through to the commercial analytics and how we understand how to monetize our content and how to grow our audience and readership. In terms of my own journey to the FT, so prior to starting FT about 3.5 years ago, I worked for John Lewis, which is a retailer in the UK, doing a kind of a similar job. But before that, I spent quite a lot of time working for a company called Experian, which is a data provider. I think that's probably where I really immersed myself into the kind of web analytics or the digital analytics world. So I did a lot of work looking at how people use the internet usage trends, but also how that ties in with sort of demographic data and a lot of the other interesting kind of behavioral data that sits out there in the digital world.
Yeah, sounds like an exciting opportunity for you guys over at FD. And by the way, what compelled you to become a data analytics professional?
Yeah, that's interesting idea. So I studied mathematics at university, and actually my first job for a number of years was working for a market analysis company called Data Monitor. So that was they're sort of similar to Gartner in terms of they analyze technology markets and that kind of thing. I sort of, after leaving that job, that's when I started working for Experian, and that's when I really took the commercial side of the analysis that I've been doing, and really started to focus more on the digital and what you might call the big data side. So that's really how I fell into it. I think in terms of what I like about it now, it's just a great place to be working really in terms of an industry. It's a massive growth industry. There's more and more data emerging every week, every day, every year. And for a lot of businesses, data is very, very important, and it's in a sense the driving force of a lot of business decisions, a lot of innovation, and a lot of the interesting things that are happening, both in the commercial world, but also in the public sector, in the voluntary sector, and elsewhere.
Absolutely. Data is full of opportunities now, and you will be speaking at our roundtable. It will be a very intimate and interactive meeting, and your session will be on data as a strategic asset, so taking ownership of analytics and technology. I mean, can you just tell us a bit more about what your session will cover?
Yeah, there's two key elements to it, really. The first one is around data as a strategic asset. So I think a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, will talk about how important data is to them. Whereas at the FT, I think we've taken it a little bit further, and we very much think of data as an asset to our business and a key driver of growth. So my boss actually at the FT is the Chief Data Officer. So data is represented at board level in terms of the importance to the organization. There are a lot of things that we've done that have taken the data we've got and really used that as a way of helping to grow our business and get closer to our readers. The second thing that I'm going to cover, which again is not unique to the FT, but is, I think, is an area where we're a little bit ahead of the curve, is that we have been pretty forward-thinking in the way that we think about technology. So we were early adopters of things like cloud services. So all of our data sits in a data warehouse in the cloud and has done for a number of years. And actually, we've built a lot of our own technology at the FT. And one of the reasons for that is that because data is so central to us, and particularly joining up data is so important, when we implemented a new analytics technology 2 or 3 years ago, we looked on the market and actually found there weren't necessarily the tools out there doing what we wanted to do. So we've actually invested quite heavily in actually building our own technology, both for collecting data, but then also for processing it and allowing us to analyze it. So I think there's some interesting things that we can talk about as to, how do you build technology versus buy what's out in the market.
Mm-hmm. And when you are early adopters, I know that it's high reward, high risk approach. I imagine that you guys encountered some obstacles as well. I mean, what were your main challenges?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of challenges in the way that we've gone about data. So the first one is data quality. So the FT, obviously its core business is journalism and very high quality journalism, but actually increasingly we look a bit like a technology company because we're building platforms and applications for our customers and for our tools. And in order to do that well, we have a pretty empowered culture at the FT. So people who work in our product and technology teams are given quite a lot of leeway in terms of building the things they want to do and allowing them to be innovative. One of the issues from a data perspective there is actually sometimes if they're kind of empowered and they build stuff, they don't always necessarily provide us the kind of data we want or necessarily think about what's the data that they need to provide that can fit into our, the structure and the way we look at data that allows us to actually understand what's going on in terms of customer behavior and in terms of really understanding how people are using our products. So that's one. So it's how do you kind of balance the need for innovation with the need to collect data and report and analyze that data and kind of keeping those two slightly contradictory aspects kind of in line so that actually we can provide the commercial business as well as the product teams with an understanding of how people are using the product. So that's one. I think the other challenge we've had when building our own technology is how do we encourage more self-service. So the FT, I think, is a little bit different to a lot of organizations in that a lot of organizations have approached data from what I call a bottom-up perspective. So they have people perhaps in marketing departments or in kind of business intelligence areas who use data, and what they're trying to do now is encourage the people higher up in the organization to take data seriously. In the FT, actually, it's almost the other way around. So we had very early buy-in from sort of board level, and actually one of our biggest challenges is actually taking the data and the focus we have on data and metrics and understanding customer behavior and actually filtering that down to people within the organization so that they can access that data themselves and so that my team doesn't act as a bottleneck to actually getting access to that data and actually be able to use that in an effective way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and in my experience, buy-in from senior management can really help. And actually, the biggest challenge for our audience, who are senior data professionals in large organizations, is usually instilling the right mindset and aligning the internal stakeholders, and really making sure that the culture is truly data-driven. And it's good to hear that you guys have that. And would you say that this was your biggest asset in terms of succeeding, or were there other skills and techniques and strategies as well that allowed you to move this forward?
Yeah, so I think having buy-in from a high level was kind of key to us. So I would definitely rather be in a position of having high level buy-in and then having to filter it down the organization than vice versa. I think another key sort of recipe for our success has really been how we have embedded the data into the culture as a whole. So one of the challenges that we were given by our CEO about 3 years ago was to say, okay, we know instinctively as a business that the more engaged people are with our products, the more they read our journalism, essentially, the more likely they are to want to subscribe to it. That just instinctively feels right and is assumed to be true. So the challenge the CEO gave to us was to say, okay, how can we prove this? How can we kind of put a number on this that allows us to actually report on this and actually make sure that we are actually engaging our readers and therefore building ourselves a sustainable business for the future? So we spent quite a lot of time looking at this and understanding what are the different metrics and how they correlate to our commercial metrics like cancellation rates and renewal rates, that kind of thing. And we actually now have a company-wide measurement of engagement and that's one of the absolute key performance indicators, KPIs within the business that everyone in the business knows about and buys into, and we really use that metric for a whole range of things. So from everything from looking at the success of a marketing campaign to determining how we invest money in terms of what products we build, in terms of shaping our strategy going forward, and even at an organizational level is an organizational level target, for example, that feeds into a lot of people's bonuses. So we really have built a whole kind of strategy and a mindset around data, and actually making people realize how important it is, and actually right down to literally kind of feeling it in their pockets in terms of how well we perform in that, because we know that engaging our customers is how we're going to build a sustainable business in the future.
It sounds like a fantastic approach, and I can definitely see why it led to success ultimately. Still, in hindsight, is there anything that you would do differently with the knowledge that you have now?
I think one of the things that we've done differently is kind of communicate the message a bit better. So we have a very good internal comms team at the FT. So I think we did a pretty good job at communicating the message initially. But what we perhaps didn't do was make it easy enough for people in the business, when we're looking at engagement, for example, to understand their specific impact on engagement. So if I work in the product team and I introduce some new functionality to the website, how can I really understand what impact that had on the engagement of our users? Or if I work in the editorial team, how can I really understand how the desk that I work on or the articles that I publish are really engaging our readers? So we can answer those questions, but historically we've had to answer them in a sort of slightly tortuous way, where we have to go in, do some some quite heavy analytics to really isolate the impacts of different things. So one of the things we're working on at the moment is sort of self-service tooling and simple things like calculators that allow people to say, okay, I want to do this thing, let's have a look and see what impact it would have on engagement, or let's test the impact this thing has had on engagement, to kind of shorten that feedback loop and make what can be quite a high-level target actually seem something that people can contribute to on a more individual basis.
Sounds super interesting. And regarding your session, so what would you say are the main takeaways? Just if you had to summarize in a few lines.
So I think the first thing is really, how can you make data central to your business growth, and what's the right way to achieve this? And when I say the right way to achieve this, I mean, obviously we'll talk a little bit about technology, but also what's the right kind of structure of a team? What's the right way in which you embed data within an organization? How do you get high-level buy-in? And also, how do you work to have sort of data literate stakeholders who can actually take this data and use it to transform a business?
Brilliant. And if you had to capture only one idea that you would like the audience to learn from the sessions, so if you had to give only one advice, what would that be?
I think it's that it doesn't need to be too complicated. So you don't need to spend millions of pounds or millions of euros to build, for example, a single customer view in order to get value from your data. There are lots of things you can do, lots of ways you can bring data together in a relatively simple way to actually get value from that data and actually do some transformational things within your business.
Perfect. I really look forward to hearing the full presentation on in November. And Robin, I think we arrived at the end of the core content of the interview. So if you're ready, we can just move on to the quick fire round. These are just a couple of questions that we ask every guest on the show. They are very simple questions, and basically you have to come up with a fantastic answer in just under 30 seconds. So, Robin, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
This isn't really data related, but someone once told me never work on a plane, and I think it's quite a good piece of advice. The way I interpret it really is, don't get your laptop out when you're on a plane. You can check your email. You can have a think about some projects you're working on, but use that kind of quiet time as a way of sort of thinking about some things other than your day-to-day work.
A very valuable piece of advice. Does sleep count as relaxation, or should it be some active thinking?
No, it can be sleeping. It can be watching a film or drinking a gin and tonic. I think as long as you're not kind of stressing yourself out and trying to work it on a laptop in a cramped space, I think it's good time well spent.
Great advice. And next question is, what is your most influential book and why?
Okay, so I'm not a massive reader of business books, if I'm honest, but when I think about this question, I'm a big fan of George Orwell, and a lot of his writing is about kind of focusing on simple and kind of democratic communication. So he wrote a famous essay called Politics in the English Language, which is all about, communicating well, or something like Animal Farm, which is a book which communicates, quite a complex message in a very simple way. For a kind of a more modern spin on that, there have been a lot of very good books come out recently on data visualization and how to kind of visualize data in interesting ways. And I think those are good sources of information or ideas when it comes to data visualization.
Fantastic. We'll make sure to leave some of those titles in the show notes. And what is the one thing about data today that you are most excited about? Artificial intelligence or AI is very exciting, but if I'm honest with you, I think this is still a bit of a longer term thing. I haven't seen a massive amount of, really amazing business applications at the moment. So I would say shorter term, it's the sort of ever expanding range of data sources. So things like the data you're getting from Internet of Things or electric cars or all of the different systems that now enable you to export data. I think that's just growing the amount of data we have and really expands the amount of things that we can do with data whilst we wait for the revolution to really kick in. Absolutely. Yeah. The implementation of AI, I think it's definitely accelerating. Some companies are already creating a competitive advantage from that. I think on the session on the 27th, we will have one led by Pardeep Bessi, Pardeep is the head of data science at LV, and he will talk about the adoption of machine learning throughout the business. And last question is, what advice would you give new and inspiring data leaders?
Yeah, for me, it's think about your storytelling and how you communicate your insights. So I've come across in my career a lot of analysts who are technically very strong, but tend to overcomplicate things or get lost when they're trying to communicate their ideas to their stakeholders or customers. And one of the things that we do when we recruit for the team at the FT is we always encourage people to do an exercise. So we give them an exercise, some data, and then they have to present it to us in person. And you'd be surprised how many candidates who look strong on paper or did quite well in the interview or had passed the test fail at that hurdle. It's at least 50%. And really the message there is there's no point being able to do good analysis if you can't then explain what your insights mean to your stakeholders, because you've just done some good analysis, but it hasn't had any impact. So I would, in addition to focusing on the technical skills, I would really encourage any new analysts or people moving up within the analyst world to focus on their storytelling and communication skills.
Absolutely, and based on the conversations that I've had with senior data practitioners from some of the most successful organizations on the globe, definitely I think what made them successful at the end of the day were really the soft skills, rather than the hard skills. Still, obviously, the technical skills are super important, but that's very valuable advice for aspiring data professionals.
Yeah, I think.
So,
I think it doesn't have. You don't have to be a kind of a presenter and get on stage and do a sort of a typical TED style kind of keynote presentation. You can have your own style, but it's all about being able to communicate well within your kind of own, your own style and your own approach to things. So communication doesn't mean you have to be, sort of an old-fashioned kind of salesperson type presenter. It just means that you need to be good at communicating your message.
Yes, and being able to communicate your message in an authentic way. Exactly. So definitely. Brilliant advice, Robin, and thank you so much for your insights. It's been very interesting, and I really look forward to hearing your session in November. And is there anything else that you would like to say, or any piece of advice that you want the audience to hear, or will you be sharing your thoughts? Anything else that you have to add on the session in November?
Yeah, I think that's the message. Come to the session in November, and hopefully we'll have a really good discussion about some of these things we talked about here.
I look forward to it, Robin.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.